But a typical open-end question in a normal survey of mine would be, what's the most important issue facing America today? And you get a 1 or 2 word response. What we wanted to do here was to go beyond the language of a pollster asking a question. So what we ended up creating, what Jigsaw has built the platform to do, is we go and ask someone a pretty broad open-end question. And to be blunt, I would never have asked a question like this if we didn't have a tool to tease it out a little differently, because it's not even just one question. It's kind of like, what does freedom mean to you in America today, and what in your life experiences have brought you to this?
Charlie Kirk's assassination has left some Americans wondering if it's possible to get along and find any common ground. I'm joined today on the Daily Signal by 2 guests who are attempting to bring Americans together to find opportunities to do exactly that. I'm joined by Yasmin Green from Google's Jigsaw and Scott Rasmussen, the pollster and founder of the Napolitan Institute. And they have partnered on a new project leading up to the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. And I'm excited to talk to both of them today. Thanks for being with us at the Daily Signal.
It's great to be here. And, it is a tough week for America, but there is still a lot of reason to be hopeful about our future.
Scott, I remember you and I have had many conversations, and I remember you reminding me that we're not all obsessed about politics as those of us who live and work in the Washington, D.C. area might be. In fact, I think you've given this equation where it's kind of an 80-10-10 country, right? Where you have people on both sides who are very passionate about politics, and then a lot of Americans who simply just don't think about it nearly as much as maybe we think they do. Tell us about this partnership and what it is you're trying to accomplish as we mark this milestone in our country's history.
We're launching a We the People project, and it's a national conversation tied obviously into our 250th birthday, but it's a national conversation with 5 people from every congressional district in America talking about what it means to be an American in the 21st century. What does freedom mean? What does equality mean? What's the American dream? And we will be presenting these results in conjunction with the 250th. But the way I look at it, because I'm a history buff, this is a continuation of a conversation that's gone on since well before Thomas Jefferson wrote those immortal words. There were 100 state and local declarations written before the Declaration of Independence. That was kind of a primitive form of crowdsourcing. Thomas Jefferson took those words and molded them into something special. Then we had Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address, and we've had the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. King and others. So this is a continuation of that conversation. We're really excited to see how it is defined in the 21st century vernacular.
Yes, but Google's Jigsaw is a powerful tool. What is it that you can bring to the equation to help Scott as he brings traditional polling methods to the equation of AI and all of the other technologies that we're seeing really change our culture?
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here and to talk about this partnership, We the People. So Jigsaw is an incubator inside Google. We use AI to benefit society. And we've been working for 10 years on AI, different types of ways to use AI to enable conversations to play out online. So one example is most of the comment spaces across publishers and platforms online use Jigsaw's technology called Perspective to manage comments. So it's used billions of times a day. It's like a global. Okay, so we have a lot of experience and we have really popular tools, but really the sense that we have not really cracked conversation online. If anything, it feels like over the course of the internet, not only have we not kind of learned how to all talk to each other in a way that's really productive and elevated, but we can talk to each other less well than we used to. And so rather than saying, can we provide tools for places where conversations happen already, we asked, what if we could help conversations that aren't happening? How could we design conversations if the goal was to get lots and lots of people to engage productively? And so we started actually, there's a kind of precursor to We the People, which is coming out of Bowling Green, Kentucky, where we worked last year with the judge executive, the lead policymaker there, and local leaders. And we designed basically a way to use AI to have the largest town hall in US history. And the idea was we're going to let anyone participate on their own terms, in their own words. We ended up kind of 1,000xing the number of people who participated. So, the judge executive told us he would have a town hall. This is a local, county level. He might get 8 people. We ran this month-long town hall, and we were like, we marketed it and we designed it so carefully, and we were like, maybe only 8 people care actually. Are we actually? How many people want to be part of a conversation? So we had 8,000 people. 1 in every 10 residents, which is pretty incredible. So it was a huge sigh of relief. And then the local leaders said, actually, if you look at the 8 people who come to town halls, they're like detractors. They're people who really, really don't want a thing to happen. So what if we now have 8,000 of those people? Maybe we're better off just having 8 people, if they're going to be like that archetype. And the thing that was stunning was that across this, there were thousands of proposals that came out of this town hall, 1 million votes, and that the vast majority, 80% of the proposals had near universal support. Yeah. So you're like, it really gave us hope that if you design conversations well, we really can find a lot that we agree on. And so we were really excited to have Scott come down to Bowling Green. And right. What did you see that inspired you to want to do We the People?
Well, I didn't know what to expect because it's just, I'd heard about it. I'd been talking with a friend of mine who works at Jigsaw for a long time and went up there. And the first thing I realized was they had designed a platform where the loudest voices didn't dominate and shut everybody out.
Okay.
And it was also a platform where it wasn't where the leader said, here's the question I want you to, address. It was, what do you care about? In fact, one of the fun things that came out of it was there was a lot of talk about sidewalks, not grand, ambitious plans, but let's take care of the basics. And I saw that and I was really intrigued, and I came back and wrote up what I thought, here's the good things I saw. And there were a few things. These are new tools. There were a few things that needed to be fixed. And then I said, but if I was doing it as a pollster, here are things I would do differently.
What is it about the community of Bowling Green? I know a little bit about it, but do you think that it's possible to replicate? I understand that Bowling Green has some is a manufacturing hub. It's also projected to grow. But do you think it can be possible to have other communities experience the same?
Well, it is absolutely possible to replicate it. I have no doubt about that because of what we saw. But I also want to point out the We the People project is not the same project that we saw in Bowling Green. After I made my comments and was asked, we came up with some ideas for this 5 people in every congressional district talking. One of the most enjoyable experiences and also one of the most challenging experiences I had is once or twice a month, I go up to New York and they have this table full of 17 project engineers and project managers saying, okay, forget what you saw in Bowling Green. We're going to start from scratch and build something. What do you want to build? And so we've created a different platform because it's a different type of conversation. But the key is, again, we're letting people talk to each other. We're letting people speak without being dominated. We're letting them hear what others say. And we're elevating the conversation in that manner. So we have a lot of really positive experiences.
Okay, so for those of us who are not intimately knowledgeable about how the polling industry works, how does that process differ from what you would traditionally see a pollster do to try to get public opinion, as Yasmin was talking about, in terms of understanding maybe where the community stands on a policy issue or what candidate they support?
So the first part is a little bit similar in that we have to select a sample. In fact, we are responsible for getting the participants in this survey, and it's really a process very much like we would do for a normal poll, except for in this case, we wanted to expand to 5 people in every congressional district rather than just a 1,000-person national sample. A traditional poll, you go out and you ask people a bunch of questions, yes, no, approve, disapprove. Sometimes we'll have open-end questions that we might ask, but a typical open-end question in a normal survey of mine would be, what's the most important issue facing America today? And you get a 1 or 2 word response. Or sometimes I really push people and we get an average response of about 8 words. What we wanted to do here was to go beyond the language of a pollster asking a question. I think I asked pretty good questions and different people ask them in different ways, but you're still limited by that. So what we ended up creating, what Jigsaw has built the platform to do, is we go and ask someone a pretty broad open-end question. And to be blunt, I would never have asked a question like this if we didn't have a tool to tease it out a little differently, because it's not even just one question. It's kind of like, what does freedom mean to you in America today, and what in your life experiences have brought you to this? And then we have an AI prompt to ask you to follow up. And the AI is taking your words and just saying, tell me a little more about this. It's kind of like, you're crying on your friend's shoulder and they're saying, get it out. Tell me a little more of what you mean by this. We're now getting 140-word responses. When you get to that length, all of a sudden you have thoughts and connections that a pollster would never have thought, are in your brain together. We ask a series of questions like that. And in this very first phase of information gathering in this project, we have over 1 million words, because you have a few questions, 140 words each, and then 2,000 participants. That's an incredible source of richness. And then we have to begin to figure out what to do with it. And that's where the AI comes in.
So how does the powerful tool that Jigsaw is take all of that data and input and help us to understand?
Yeah, when we were thinking about how to design this, we were like kind of inspired just by what does a conversation look like when it goes well just between two people? When you're talking to someone and they give you one-word answers, that's a sign that things aren't going so well.
Right.
Or when you're talking to somebody and they're just talking and it's just a one-way show, that's also not going. So we were like, well, clearly you need people to express themselves, you need people to listen, and you need for there to be turn-taking. But what does that look like when you go from 2 people to 2,000 people? I mean, for this, we've got 2,500 people so far for this. It's really a microcosm of America, this national conversation that we started, We the People. How would you design it? And it's not 2,500 one-on-ones. So what is it? And so we have really thinking about if the goal is to have people share and be heard and find agreement and also find disagreement that people understand and, can respect, how would you design it? So we have these rounds, 3 rounds. So there's turn taking, but at the collective level, everyone talks at once, but with this AI, and the AI is teasing out nuance. That's when Scott was saying we've gone from 1 word to 140 words and then 1 million words across the conversation. Then the second round is listening. You get to listen to what your fellow countrymen and women thought, and we're kind of building basically it's like a Google Maps but for opinions. So Google Maps is terrain. You can go zoom in and out of the US, and a lot of people want to go to their state and their city and their backyard and their front porch. But what if you could do that with opinion? What do Americans think about equality and freedom? And then what's the aspect that I care most about, like laws or free speech, or and you can drill in. And so we're getting people to listen and engage. And then the third round, and this is really important because we need to know that we've run this conversation in a way that was faithful to the way that the participants experienced it. So then we give it back to everybody. So we'd say, is this what the conversation felt like to you? So imagine if you were building a Google Maps for opinions. You first have to get all the data, because we know where cities and towns and schools and police departments are, but we don't know that for opinions. So we use this first round of AI to get people talking, to get all the opinion data. And then we say, let's organize it. What's the equivalent of towns or cities or states for our beliefs and perspectives? And then we're like, does this opinion map seem right to you? So I think we're doing something that's never been done before, partly because it's never been possible without technology. So the AI part is basically tease out all the nuance, get all the data, and then organize it. And then we give it back to people.
Based on your experience in Bowling Green and what you're creating with We the People, how do you see it as actionable, either on the part of policymakers in those communities or in Washington, D.C., or individual Americans who either participated or are paying attention to this project?
Well, when we start talking about actionable, we know in Bowling Green, the city officials really appreciated it and they're acting on it. That was a key part of it. With this, when Yasmin talks about that last step of playing the conversation back, we're using what we learned from the conversation to create a series of propositions. Now, these aren't going to be exactly the same as the Declaration of Independence. Again, language is different, but they're going to be statements of what people think these ideals mean. We're asking them to vote on them. Not just does this reflect, but does this look like what an ideal should be? And if 2/3 of the congressional districts agree, we're going to put this into a statement of American ideals heading into the 250th. That's the first step. But there's a depth to this. It's not that I can say 73% of people agree with this. I mean, pollsters love to cite numbers, but you could actually go, if you were a policymaker in North Carolina, you could take our results nationally and actually look at the words that people in your state used. You know, we're going to have these conversations, and I can just tell you from looking at the early results myself, you get some of that richness of the different dialogue. And across generations and across different demographic boundaries, we all have different cultural reference points, but we bring them into a same conversation.
Well, you were both much farther ahead on this project than I had realized, because it wasn't long ago that you announced the partnership. What phase are you in, and what does the timeline look like as we approach July 4th, 2026?
First part is talk about the pilot that we did and those results.
We're working really, really fast. We were just remarking on that yesterday, that we decided that we're going to do this, and then that's why Scott keeps coming in to Jigsaw, because we're co-developing with him and his team. It's a really exciting time for AI. I feel like there are so many parts of Google that are trying to take AI to new heights. And our part at Jigsaw is to bring it back down to earth and be like, how is this really going to show up in people's lives in a way that they're like, this wasn't possible before and this is meaningful to me. And you can only design that type of AI if you're doing it with people who want to host a conversation as ambitious as we the people. So we're really deploying fast. We started with, the national conversation just launched on Friday, but we did do a pilot before. So it's a tenth the size, and we wanted to test the technology and see what we're learning. We have some really good learnings, but the high level of there were two metrics I would leave you with from that. They map to two hypotheses we had. So Scott came into this being like, I want to do this. I want to use AI to prove my belief that there is a lot that unites us as Americans and there's a lot of common ground. And then from our side, having been AI developers in the conversation space, can you really do a large scale conversation that people feel like works for them? So on the first front, I'm going to ask you, we went in and asked people what percentage. So we asked Americans if they felt they had common ground with their fellow citizens. What percentage do you think said that they felt that they had common ground with fellow
At the very beginning.
At the very beginning, 10%.
40%. So
40. Okay.
So already, you have that the DC, the cloud over you. Yes. And then by the end of this, and this is not we didn't send people away for 6 months with a random sample. They just participated in a conversation that was well designed. What percentage do you think said they felt they had common ground with their neighbor?
80%?
Yeah, 70%. We'll get to 80% maybe with the main thing. But it's incredible to it's really validating of Scott's thinking coming in, but when you design the way conversation happens on the internet, it's not inevitable that when we get together and talk, it has to go that way. Right. So I've been really moved by that finding from the pilot. The other one for us was when you go and ask all the people that participated, did this feel like this was productive, and do you feel like that the representation of it is true for you? 91% of people said that it represented them. So we're really encouraged from what we saw in the pilot.
Yeah. When you did the pilot, without revealing maybe too much of the content, but did you find that people were talking about big picture ideas related to freedom and equality, or kind of micro issues that were in their community?
So this conversation, one of the things that I suggested we would want to do different than Bowling Green was to suggest broad themes rather than just whatever you want to talk about. So these were about freedom and equality, and we actually staged the conversation so you first expressed your own views, and then we did bring up to their attention some of the historic definitions from our, just from great writings that we all grew up with. And so we had them evaluate that. So that was where the discussion was. For me, and I look at it in different ways, we each have different concerns in this. First thing that I was really pleased with was one of our roles is to moderate the discussion. If Rob Bluey comes on and gives a profanity-laced response, I'm not going to include that in my categories. But you know what? In our 200 pilot participants, not a single person had to be rejected. They responded really well to it. The next thing that we wanted to look for, because we're very conscious about the perceptions or potential for bias, I wanted to see, did Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or liberals drop off more, feel more offended? And one of the things that we did, we went through the comments from these 200 people and tried to identify this is clearly a conservative or this is clearly a liberal. And from their comments, only 35 out of the 200 were clearly ideological, which fits my 10-10-80 theory.
It sure does, yes. Yeah.
And I think that helps the conversation too when you start in that manner. So we've been encouraged. We're also committed to making sure that there's a lot of trust. So when somebody in the listening phase, we've asked your question and now we're showing you what other people say, there will be a summary category. Here's what 700 people said. But you can go in and look yourself to read the actual comments. So if you don't trust the AI summary, go in and read it yourself. And again, that's a big part of the experience before we ask them to comment.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as it pertains to the 435 districts, as you both know, the U.S. House of Representatives is nearly equally divided between Republicans and Democrats. Mike Johnson has the narrowest of margins as a speaker to deal with. And so how do you make sure that as you are identifying the 5 to 10 people in each district, that they're truly representative of the people who are serving in Congress and it doesn't skew too far to the right or the left?
First of all, we don't want them to represent people in Congress. We want them to represent the American people. Big difference.
Yeah.
And when we talk about that, the sampling, the people within a particular district are random within the district. The national sample we are making sure is reflective of gender, age, race, political party, all of the traditional demographics. If we went into a very, very red district, is it theoretically possible that you get too many Democrats in that sample or the reverse in a very blue district? Of course, but sampling theory is going to tell you that maybe that happens in one district. But then again, we have some members of Congress who are unrepresentative of their districts too. So the big takeaway here, we wanted the geographic dispersion, but the national sample will be reflective of the population at large. And we wanted the vote by congressional district because we did want to tie it in. When they had the Continental Congress and were voting on independence, they were voting by geographic entities. We wanted to really make sure we tied that into this because we didn't want to have something where one part of the country was all, yes, this is what we mean by freedom, and the other part of the country saying something else.
That's interesting. Thank you for explaining that, Scott. Yasmin, you said something earlier I want to come back to, and I think that many Americans seem intimidated by AI or threatened by it. So how do you think that a project like this can help them better understand the power that AI might be able to offer not only our system of government, but in their own personal lives and make improvements to how they live?
Honestly, if this project goes well, the AI part is invisible to them.
Okay.
I feel like as far as I know, no person in the world wakes up in the morning and thinks I just need some more AI in my life. Is there a company that can solve it? They think I have needs. I have and a lot of what has been coming out of the tech companies has really been around you can do things faster. Or better, or kind of productivity, efficiency. I mean, everyone wants to. It's got the drudgery of life. We do want to do that more efficiently, and I think there's so much more that we could do. That's could we, if we don't stay in conversation together, then doesn't really matter how good the AI gets. We're really in trouble. And so I think the goal for us has been if we pan out. And we're never mind how quickly or efficiently you can do your email, but what would it, could we actually use this powerful technology to have us see each other and know that we agree on a lot that's really important and be able to disagree in a way that, that we can live with and even respect, then that would be really powerful. So probably if we're really successful, the AI part people won't feel that AI, because I feel a lot of this AI moment, first there's a lot of hype and hysteria. And also, there's almost and we've seen this in our research, people feel that technology is happening to them, rather than with them or for them. It just feels like this AI, the train has left the station and I don't even know what it means. No one defines it. Honestly, you get 10, AI researchers, they wouldn't even define AI the same way among themselves. So how can we as, with policymakers and across sectors have meaningful discussions? So it's a time of a lot of it feels opaque. So our goal is just do it, have it work well behind the scenes,
Oh, I think that's the right goal.
Yeah.
And I think that in some ways that can help Americans recognize the power of technology to help solve some of these big issues and maybe even spark conversations between neighbors who view each other because they have political signs in their front yard that are different as enemies as opposed to people who actually have much in common.
Right. That was actually the judge executive of the mayor equivalent of Warren County, where we did this town hall in Kentucky. He was asked, why do you think he said, I didn't expect this much agreement. Why do you think there was so much agreement that came out of the Bowling Green town hall? And he said, because the ideas weren't labeled with like I'm from this political party. The proposals, everyone just had to evaluate them on their own merits. And one of the things I'm excited about from We the People is that we're going to have people who come out with the same value, but their journey to get there is completely different. And people are sharing a lot about their life experience. Like someone will be like, when you talked about what kind of things are we getting out, I think that we're going to see a lot of like the high level values are aligned, but the reason like someone will be like, my parents are Holocaust survivors and this is why I believe this, or my husband was, an experience of my husband when he lost his job it's so personal. And so we're going to have the quotes and that was something that was really important to you was this needs to stay in the words of the people that spoke it.
Yeah.
We don't want AI to do anything fancy. We actually haven't asked ourselves like, what could AI do? Let's do that. We've actually said like what would serve the conversation.
And I think that's really important. AI, this would not be possible without AI.
Right.
Yes. It would not be possible without Jigsaw building this platform. But with the vision of the project and the entire focus on We the People and having a conversation, it wasn't how can we use AI, it was what does the entire discussion look like? Any tool can be used for good or bad. It's true of broadcasting. It's true of traditional polling. But the goal was to have a good conversation. How can we let people speak in their words? One of the things you can do easily as a pollster is you can say, well, okay, I ask you a question, and then I say, well, George Washington thought differently. Now what do you think? And you can lead them astray. This is letting people hear from their peers, other people randomly selected. So it was the design of the conversation that guided the process. And it's going to be consistently. I made a comment about it. We don't want it to represent members of Congress. We want it to represent authentic voices of the American people. And I think as we roll this out and you begin to see things, we will be sharing with you, we'll be explaining it in their words, not ours.
Interesting. And to that point, I consider you a disruptor in the polling industry. You've coined this term counter polling to do things differently than I think other pollsters typically do. How do you see that technology for the long term, maybe shaping how public opinion is done in this country?
It is certainly going to change things.
Okay.
But as a starting point, again, just to understand, when I first I went to Bowling Green, saw what was being done, then went to Jigsaw. We had our first conversation. What has come out of this was not exactly what I had in mind at the beginning, because this team of brilliant people were giving me new ideas. We were interacting. It's been a real co-development project. Do I think it's going to be a disruptor in the polling industry? Absolutely. The ability to be able to go out and capture 1 million words of response around a topic that we don't quite know how to ask about is going to give us new insights. And that's something, I guess maybe it's even a focus group at scale is what we're doing.
It seems like it,
and
yes.
And then we can use that to guide traditional polling. So I think it's going to be but that's in the future. We're still rolling this out, still building it. Once we get through this, then I can answer that next question better.
One of the most valuable things that I experienced in the 2024 election was doing focus groups. I think we did a total of 8 focus groups in 4 different cities and swing states: Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Atlanta, and Phoenix. And yes, they were small groups of individuals, but I agree with you, Scott, hearing what's on their mind. And we identified in some of these big cities, for instance, crime was top of mind for a lot of them. And it may not show up in those quantitative surveys, right, as one of the top issues, but there was clearly something concerning to them. And I think that, you see that now playing out in our politics on almost a daily basis. And so I look forward to seeing the results of this. Yasmin, how do you see from your perspective, where Jigsaw, what learnings are you hoping to achieve from this project to take Jigsaw maybe onto the next initiative?
Well, the primary goal, can you design a conversation that works at scale, feels like that would be a very significant contribution. We have actually been approached about helping with nationwide conversations elsewhere. It's again a little, I think like there's so much
Across the world or in the United
like
States?
a couple of other countries.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that there's a cautious optimism. Like, could AI be something that actually helps us? Because everyone, the starting idea for the internet was, I've been in tech for like 2 decades.
Yeah.
I remember the time when like people really this libertarian idea that just let people talk, and the best ideas will rise to the top, and it will all. That really had purchase. That was really the thinking behind it. I mean, and in a way, we do have ideas competing with each other online. It's not quite fulfilling the promise of the internet, because it's, I think we look at what's happening online and we think like that's a mirror of ourselves, but it's a fun house of mirrors. It's not, and it starts to have a really corrosive effect, because we're like, if that's who we are, I need to, I need to go out with my shield, or I need to, be prepared to engage in the world that in a way that exacerbates things. So having been in tech for so long, and seeing how we've really like strayed so far from the original vision, that would be a really huge contribution. I think we could do it for kind of civic, giving people civic voice, which is a big part of Jigsaw's like goals. Like, we really want to use AI to give people, like voice and choice in the world around them. We're continue to be excited to work with policymakers like we did in Bold and Green. I think they are very special. But there's a lot of demand to do it elsewhere. And actually, the judge executive came to like a developer conference that Google held, which is so fun. I mean, I didn't think he imagined that he would, and he was talking to like other local leaders, and they were hearing from him. Again, I feel like I'm happy to be here, like right now, but ultimately, like, it's really going to be Scott and, other people who see the results of this who are going to say whether it's worthwhile. But I think there's a lot of appetite to host conversations better. Focus groups, sure, for polling campaigns, but even like social media, like, we haven't had much innovation in the way we talk to each other on social media platforms in 2 decades. So I think we're on the cusp of something exciting.
In fact, I'd say in some respects, it's people are turning it off because they are so turned off by the level of conversation or lack thereof. So I appreciate your optimism, but I have to ask the question. It seems the incentives are for the politicians, for those big media companies to lean into the divisiveness, right? Because that's what they ultimately see. Our country, if you look at the truly, how many congressional districts are competitive anymore? Right. Maybe certainly, 400 are safe seats, right, Scott?
Right.
So, you're up against a challenge, right, in terms of like trying to not only disrupt how people have conversations, but also the system itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. So first, to answer your question directly, over the last 40 years, incumbents have won 94% of the elections. I mean, we have a broken system. We see it playing out in the redistricting wars, where it's becoming very clear it's not the voters who choose their representatives, it's the person who draws the map. So that is an issue that is problematic. But that's also a DC-focused response. Okay. There are 519,000 state and local elected officials in the country. Most of them are not engaged in the political wars the same way it is in DC. Yes, there are partisan differences, and there are some very heated debates in some school boards and city councils and things. But the people who are serving in state and local elected roles actually go to the grocery store with their constituents. They see people at Little League games. They're interacting in different ways. And they have a huge impact on the process. When a congressman goes back home, they hang out with their local officials. So we want to, one of my things in terms of my own personal preference for the way America should work, we need to have more authority going back closer to home, to state and local officials, give them more authority. But part of doing that is letting them control the conversation. And I think this tool will help a lot of local communities. And in some cases, I think the same platform that was used in Bowling Green will help some of those conversations and help those officials.
Well, it's inspiring to hear you talk about it, and thank you for earlier connecting it back to the founding era when a lot of these conversations led to the creation of the United States of America to begin with. In wrapping up here, I would like each of you to share a little bit more with our audience how they can follow the work that you're doing, if they're inspired to maybe embark on these better conversations in their own communities. What are some of the tools that you make available at Jigsaw? And Scott, certainly tell us what the work you're doing, much of it innovative at the Napolitan Institute. We'll begin with you.
So the first thing is to recognize that there is common ground. I mean, that is going to be a big part of our discussion with the We the People project. It's something I have been showing in poll after poll for a very long time. One of the most discouraging things to me is most Republicans do not believe most Democrats love their country. Most Democrats do not believe most Republicans love their country. Get that out of your system. When we ask about core ideals and core directions and decision-making closer to home and all sorts of these topics, there is a lot more common ground than people expect. Sometimes, I mean, one of the words we've talked about in the past is socialism. Somebody says they're a socialist and you want to fight them if you're a conservative. Well, it turns out 80% of the people who say they like socialism like free markets. They're using a different label. They're using a word that means something different than you think it means. So get past that. Ask them, have a conversation with them. Don't just slam them. I think that is the biggest thing. We need to stop automatically assuming that if you disagree with me on one issue, you're evil and you want to destroy our country, and then begin to look for ways to put it into practice. But, you know, as a shameless plug, I have a book coming out early next year that'll talk more about this.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Well, breaking some news right here on the show. So, Yasmin, I'll give you the final word here.
Well, we actually have just put up a website, which I guess this will be the public announcement of the website, which we hadn't talked about yet, which is at wethepeople-250.org, where we want to bring people along on this journey with us. I was thinking about this as like going to something like very, very inspiring that Scott just said, done something so silly and tactical. But I was reminded that when we did this project in Bowling Green, we had all this alignment around these policy proposals that people wanted. And then we had like other people's ideas. So like one of the ideas was that the policy proposal someone had taken the time to submit as part of this town hall was that they thought that there should be a law that mandated that ketchup sachets were included in every takeout, like bag that they got from like a fast food place should have a ketchup. And it really stuck with me as like, it was really important for that person to share that. It had no supporting votes, but it's there in the opinion map. It's there. Somebody else felt that like pavements should be carpeted. Again, no support for this idea, but it's there.
It's there,
so
right?
I think what we need to feel is that our ideas are heard by somebody else, and so this the people like the pilot that we ran just now for We the People came away feeling that they were heard and that just to connect to what you just said, somewhere upwards of 90% of people felt that you can disagree and still love America.
Yeah.
It's okay to disagree and still love this country. So we're kind of hoping that that's what, we want everyone to put all their ideas, the ones about ketchup and, carpeted pavements. And then we want to people to come away feeling like this was true to what we said. And we can be in conversation. We can make it through this together. And if you go to this website, wethepeople-250.org, you can stay the course with us. And then hopefully we can, if we're successful, there will be like a new paradigm in conversations that listeners can participate in.
Well, thank you both for this exciting collaboration and sharing it with our audience. I know that Daily Signal listeners and viewers are always looking for ways to get engaged and be part of the process in terms of developing policy ideas or commenting on them. So I appreciate you facilitating a way for the American people to have a greater voice. We will be sure to leave links to both the Jigsaw project and the Napolitan Institute, as well as the website for We the People in in the show notes. So if you're interested in learning more, make sure you click on that description and you can find more information about what's going on with We the People. Thank you for watching today. We appreciate you tuning in. And Scott and Yasmin, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Okay. How'd that go? You good? You got everything you wanted to say? Okay.
So Scott was saying, he was like, I'm so excited for you to meet Rob. He's so smart and so kind, and his smile. And the funny thing is, I think that about you. So I was like, if you're saying that about him, like, what is this guy? And then, so to be here with both of you, I just...